Let me introduce you to the CEO and President of Concerned Women for America. This is Penny Nance.
Guys, thank you. Thanks for coming out. We're so excited to be in Richmond. We've been all over the state of Virginia and winding down that part of our tour today. We're in North Carolina before that, on our way next to Montana and North Dakota. Thank you all for coming out. I'm going to give us some real action items going forward today. It's this hot day. You all stay in the shade, but again, make sure people can come in and out the doors. But first, I'm going to have a dear friend, a pro-life champion and conservative in the Virginia State Senate, who we're in very near his home district here in Richmond area, and that is Senator Steve Martin.
Thank you, Penny. Appreciate it. Does she vote? She does vote. I believe that she does. She votes because she cares as much as anyone would about the things that are important to our country, our families. Who is more attentive to the concern about the economic well-being of our country than the woman who cares about the finances of her home and meeting the needs of her children, making sure those things are met? And so when we speak about job losses and job opportunity losses, no one cares more than the women of our state. When we talk about energy and its cost, whether it's in our home or our travels, or whether or not it costs, we have jobs as a result of being able to explore offshore, or our coal mine operations, or any other opportunity we have for creating jobs and aiding in our economy and strengthening our economy, she votes and she cares. When it's about life issues, about the very sanctity of human life and that life in the womb and the value that we give to it, she votes and she cares. And there are, across the board, you can't help but see how the women of our great state have the greatest impact, and because of their great concern and their compassion. So she's going to vote, and I appreciate you folks being out here today to make that point and to be involved in such a way. I'm so thankful for Penny and for her involvement and her leadership throughout the years in this regard. You need to take some of the messages that I spoke of and more that you know of and you are compassionate about, and talk to your friends and your neighbors, your people that you go to church with, the people that you sing in the choir with, whether it be the people that you work with, you talk to in your backyard or in your cul-de-sac. Make sure they go to the polls, and make sure they care like you do, whether male or female. And make sure they go out to vote, and make sure they carry the same message with the same passion that you do. And if you in any way can help them, and by the way, why would you be helping them? Because you care about them. Why would you vote? Because you care about them. You care about our country, you care about our family. So I encourage you to do that and maximize that vote, and if we do, we will see the kind of change that makes a difference for our Commonwealth and our great nation. And Penny, thank you for these few moments. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Steve, for coming. We appreciate all you do for the people of Virginia and the people of your district. Next, I want to bring Andrea Lindsay up, who is our Southern Virginia Director for our She Votes 2010 or 2012 project. I'm living in the past. And she's going to tell us a little bit about why she's a part of this effort.
Thank you. Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you so much for coming and attending our bus tour. A little bit about me. My background is actually in law. I wanted to pursue law, and came on with Concerned Women for America. I did an internship, I believe it was last January, and loved it so much I ended up adding another major and changing my career direction. So now I'm doing legislative policy and doing public policy, that kind of thing. And so that's one of the things that Concerned Women for America, I mean, because we're a public policy organization, and it's so encouraging to not only have the information, but the tools and resources necessary to be able to make a difference. And I think that's what sets CWA apart from many of the other organizations. And we're doing the first ever Get Out the Vote campaign. It's unique because it's from a nonprofit perspective, and it's so interesting to be able to do it based on not just a party, but on conservative values. And being a young woman, it's Young Women for America was part of that chapter as well. And the unique aspect of it, I think, going from, I grew up in a college prep school, grew up in Christian schools, and so I kind of had that background information already. I kind of was strong in my faith, and then going to a public university, you don't really realize what people are being taught, and it's so far to the left, and a lot of it is liberal, and so a lot of people come out with a very different perspective than they came in with. And I was fortunate enough to have a strong background and to be kind of grounded before, and then I was able to transfer to Liberty, and then I found my way to CWA, and it's just been such a blessing to be able to give them the tools and the resources to kind of shape my direction and shape my future. And it's definitely because of CWA and YWA and the Get Out the Vote campaign that has definitely encouraged me toward the direction that I'm going in. So.
Andrew, she gave a little Young Women for America shout out there. Those are our college chapters that we just kicked off about a year ago, and we have 7 chapters founded now and are working on another 3 or 4 in process, and hope to have them all over the country in a just short amount of time. So if anybody wants to be involved in that effort, let us know. Okay, I'm going to bring up James Christofferson, who is with Judicial Action Group, and he's going to give us their wonderful perspective, and he's a dear friend of CWA.
Thank you so much, Penny. I'm obviously not a woman, but I am very much concerned and very honored and excited to be taking part in this. When I joined the She Votes bus tour earlier today, I'd never seen the bus before, and I was very excited to see the checklist here on the side of the bus. 4 very important aspects of today. And I want to really focus on the 3rd check mark, the she being Christian. Standing in front of a bus with a small group of people like this sort of conjures up images of back in the day when our nation was first being founded, and even before our nation was founded, when pastors and leaders used to crisscross the nation on horseback and wagons, on the backs of trains, stopping in towns, pulling over to stand in front of the people and talk and call on them to become active, to take a role in their government, and more importantly, to take an active role in their faith. And through 2 key moments in American history, through the First Great Awakening and the Second Great Awakening, we saw America turn back to God. And as a result, we saw America turn towards liberty and freedom in ways that no nation on earth had ever known before that. Just before the Second Great Awakening, in the early 1800s, we were in a time of a dark time in our nation. We were not all equals in this country. Slaves could not vote. People of color could not vote. Women could not vote at all in this country. As a result of the momentum and the revival that came from the Second Great Awakening, we saw our nation renewed and a new interest in women's suffrage, in abolition, and bringing our nation to really be grounded in the Christian principles that it was originally founded on. Now we get to stand here in front of a bus today on a She Votes 2012 tour, because she can vote and she should vote. I'm with a very small organization called Judicial Action Group. We're focused through our work and through prayer on bringing about judicial renewal, but we're also interested in seeing spiritual renewal in this country, because we know that without the second, you cannot have the first. Without a spiritual revival, without a 3rd Great Awakening in this country, we cannot see our nation repaired. We cannot see liberty and freedom upheld in the way that it was meant to be. And so we've launched a new campaign, lambofhope.com. Many folks have seen this shirt earlier today and said, "Oh, you're a Republican?" No, look closer. On the shirt is a lamb. We modeled it after political party icons because they're recognized as symbols of power. It's what people look to. But we don't look to a political party or an individual person for our hope. We don't look to any one leader to bring about change for our nation. We look to the Lamb of Hope, the Lamb of God, our one and only hope, who was sent for the forgiveness of the sins of the world. And so we ask that you join us, visit the website, fall on your knees in prayer with us and thousands of other Americans, asking God to bring about a great revival, that he might restore the church, this commonwealth, and this country. Thank you.
Thank you, James, so much. I want to bring up Jessica Cochran. Jessica's a graduate of William & Mary and also on staff for Family Foundation. She's a political analyst and is going to share her perspective. Come on up. Thank you.
Good morning.
Good morning.
My name is Jessica Cochran. I'm with the Family Foundation of Virginia, and we are just so pleased to be here today with Concerned Women for America's She Votes bus tour. The message they're carrying across Virginia is very important, and we're very thankful for your efforts. In recent months, the president of NARAL, one of the most extreme and aggressive pro-abortion organizations, she resigned because she recognized that my generation has rejected the radical message of the pro-abortion community. She told a story that she saw thousands of young people at a pro-life rally in Washington, D.C., and she said in response, "My gosh, they are so young. There are so many of them, and they are so young." Polling indicates that younger Americans are becoming more pro-life day by day, and they are more likely to be energized to vote for pro-life candidates. But this should come as no surprise to you all. My generation has grown up looking at the ultrasound images of our siblings, and today, the unborn children of our own and then of our friends as well. Something that the previous generations have not been able to do. This has had a profound impact on open-minded young Americans. A picture, they say, is worth 1,000 words. However, I would argue that an ultrasound says more than a speech could ever say. Many of my generation are turned off by the radical rhetoric of the pro-abortion organizations. Nor do we like its tactics. Just recently, actually, my boss and some other pro-life women held a press conference just blocks from here. And the pro-abortion protesters actually tried to shout them down and disrupt their efforts simply to express their viewpoints. This kind of disrespectful action, I believe, is exactly what has helped drive a majority of my generation out of the pro-abortion movement. We want respectful dialogue and not inflamed rhetoric. Furthermore, we want candidates for office who share our respect for the value of human life. Those who can talk about the issue of abortion in a winsome way, and also those who support reasonable and common sense measures that can reduce the number of abortions in America. Women make most of the healthcare decisions in our nation, from what healthcare plan to provide for their families to what doctors we should go to. We want the best information available to make this informed decision. We want to be spoken to and not yelled at. This November, women will make the difference in who occupies the White House for the next 4 years. We thank CWA for their efforts to ensure that pro-life women will be out and they will be registered and they will be Combined with the Family Foundation's efforts to both register pro-family voters in churches and communities and voter education and mobilization efforts, we believe that more pro-life, pro-family voters will be at the polls on Election Day. Thank you.
Well said, Jessica. Good job. So I'm going to give a little bow on all of this, and then we're going to bring up Kenda Bartlett, who is the person that gives you the details, gives you what you can do to actually make a difference. But I'll first want to give a little perspective here. You know, Ronald Reagan said, "Freedom is never more than one generation away from extinction." We didn't pass it to our children in the bloodstream. It must be fought for, protected, and handed on for them to do the same. Or one day, we will spend our sunset years telling our children and our children's children what it was once like in the United States when men were free. Folks, I think that's more true today than when he originally spoke them. In fact, I believe that we are at a tipping point in this nation. And I don't know, if things don't change, if we'll continue to be the same great, constitutionally protected and founded nation that our founding fathers fought for and died for on the bloody battlefields of Boston and Lexington and Concord and Yorktown, or whether it would be greatly diminished. Now, I don't have to tell you all what's wrong, and Jessica did a great job of kind of explaining the issue of, talking a little bit about the issue of life. We have 1 in 4 or more pregnancies in an abortion. We've had about 50 million abortions since Roe v. Wade. We have forgotten who our friends are around the world. We have a $16 trillion debt hanging over the heads of every man, woman, and child in this nation. We have unemployment rates that have skyrocketed. I was just talking with someone who works for the state of Virginia about the huge increase of people on Medicaid in the last 4 years. We have so many issues. I could go on and on. We were promised and sold a bill of goods on the issue of health care. This administration told us, "Don't worry, we got this. We're going to take care of you. That your health care, in fact, is going to be cheaper." But in reality, we know that it's increased on the average of $2,400 per person. They said, "Don't worry, you don't have to violate your consciences. We did an executive order. You're good." But then we found out on August 1st that the reality is that we do have to violate our consciences. and we have maybe a year to get over it, but we're not going to get over it. And that the people, that our friends that are Catholic, are going to have to pay for contraceptives when it's against their faith, and we evangelicals are going to have to pay for abortion-inducing drugs, despite the fact that there's no dearth of contraception in this country. It's about sticking it to conservatives and sticking it to people of faith. Our religious liberty is being violated, folks. We are in a very difficult situation. You know, you've heard people talking about the war on women, the GOP war on women. The truth is, it's a war for women, because women have carried every presidential election since 1964, and they can't win without it. But the sad fact is that conservative Christian women are underrepresented in this process, because we know statistically that when you go to church on Sunday, about half of the people in the congregation aren't even registered to vote. And half of the ones that are registered won't show up on election day. Folks, we got to change that number. We got to change that statistic. And we've got to bring women of faith out of their comfortable pews, and they've got to keep praying, but they've also got to pray with their legs, as Frederick Douglass said, and go to the voting booth and change the course of history. We call this at CWA an Esther moment, right? You remember the story of Esther, who was a 6th century BC nobody, a woman who was an orphan and came out of obscurity, raised up by the hand of God to be the queen of the vast Medo-Persian Empire. Through no plans of her own. And when she got there, she got kind of comfortable, right? She didn't choose this, but it was good. To the point where her uncle had to come to her and have a little talk. And he said, Esther, you're at a crisis. Your people are going to be wiped out if you don't do something. And then he says, you can ignore this, but your family will suffer. God will raise somebody else up, but you and your family will suffer. And then he says something that I think applies to every one of us here today. He says, who knows, Esther? Perhaps you were born for such a time as this. Perhaps everything in your life has been leading up to this very moment. Folks, we need Esthers today. We need folks that are willing, women that are willing to rise up and be leaders in our culture, that are willing to take charge of the situation and be leaders among our churches and among other women, getting the word out. And how do we do that? How do we change the course of history? How do we change the path that we all see as destructive? We are empowered through the blood of our founding fathers with the right to vote. And we are empowered by the suffragists just about 100 years ago who were imprisoned and tortured for our right to vote. And then I want to talk about the women around the world. The women in the Middle East who would give anything to have this right. They would give anything to have our freedoms. And yet, we're busy. We're distracted. It rained today. I can't make it to the polls. You know, I remember recently the Iraqi women, when they were given the opportunity to vote, they came out in droves. In fact, they came out in higher numbers and percentage than we do. And they risked their very lives to do it. In fact, the day they went to vote, they literally had to step over pools of blood to go into the election booth. But they did. They stepped over the blood of people who had been there earlier in the day and had died for their right to vote. But vote they did. They went into those voting booths, they pulled a lever, and then when they came out, they dipped their finger in purple ink and they told the world what they had done. Let's draw strength from their example. We have got to do the same thing. We've got to be energized. We've got to be out. We've got to educate others. We've got to churn out the vote within our churches, within our friends, within other like-minded individuals this year. I hope that you will stand up today, stand with CWA, and be the Esthers of your generation. Will you do that? Yes. So we're going to say she votes. Say it with me. She votes. She votes. She votes. Thank you, and God bless you.